Hello there, I'm Captain Jim Prejean coming to you from Southern California. And today I want to talk to you a little bit about what motivates people to go cruising in their sailboat. The majority of people go cruising because they want to see exotic places and for the adventure. And those were reasons for me as well, but they weren't my primary reasons. I was in a partnership in a consulting firm. It was a very unpleasant partnership and very, very stressful. And what I would do on Thursdays is I would take a long lunch, go out on my bike, and bike about 8 or 9 miles one way, have lunch, and then bike back. And that's what I did this day. I biked over to a little outdoor restaurant in Seaport Village in San Diego, and I ordered a vegetarian sandwich. At the time, I was a vegetarian. I was very slender, very fit, and I started eating my sandwich. I got about halfway through it and started feeling really bad, and it started getting worse rapidly. I finally decided, I better put my sandwich away and I better head back, because I had about 8 or 9 miles to get back. So I packed up my sandwich, put it on the back of my bike, and got on my bike, and I got about 3 blocks, and the pain got so bad I fell off the bike. And at that point, I had this tremendous pain in my chest. In fact, it felt like I had an elephant standing on my chest. Now I'm on the ground, and I'm in Seaport Village on the inside portion. And I looked up and I noticed that there was a payphone about 10 feet away. So I crawled over to the payphone and grabbed the receiver and hit operator, and the operator came on. I didn't have any change handy, needless to say. And the operator came on and I said, I'm having a medical emergency. I'm not quite sure what's going on, but I don't have a doctor. The only doctor I have is my dentist. And would you mind giving them a call? So the operator called my dentist. The hygienist answered the phone, and I told her who I was and what was happening, and she said, don't move and don't hang up. I'm going to call an ambulance for you. So I just put the receiver down and just waited. In the meantime, my bike is laying on the ground, and I happen to notice that there's a stray dog looking at me and my sandwich on the back of my bike. Now, I'm in the midst of having what appeared to be a heart attack. I have this dog distracting me. And I could see the dog was trying to decide whether he could get my sandwich off the back of my bike before I could stop him. And we stared at each other off and on for a couple of minutes. Then the dog decided, I guess, that I wasn't going to be able to stop him. So he proceeds to go and grab my sandwich off the back of the bike and eat it right in front of me. It was only about 4 or 5 feet away. Now this was an avocado and lettuce sandwich, but he seemed to be enjoying it. Then I heard the ambulance, but it was not getting close to me. It was out on the street, and I figured it was probably for me. But they were having difficulty finding me. I was on the inside of Seaport Village on the sidewalk. So a woman walked by me, nicely dressed, probably mid-30s, and I said to her, I think I may be having a heart attack, and I don't think the ambulance is able to find me. Would you walk out to the parking lot, which was maybe 30, 40 yards, and point him in my direction. And she said, I got to get back to work. I'll go out there for a minute. So she proceeded to walk in that direction. I'm not sure whether she did anything. But a few minutes later, an ambulance came up to the back of Seaport Village on the lawn, and they got out and took out their stretcher, their gurney, and were loading me on it. And at that point, I noticed my wife had also arrived there. The dentist had called her and told her what was going on. So they put me in the back of the ambulance, and then we had to drive right through San Diego, and it was the beginning of rush hour, and we had to go down Fifth Avenue, which is a busy street. So we proceeded to head for the nearest hospital, and while I'm in the ambulance, I have time to think for a moment, and it dawns on me, I could be dying. Now I'm 51 years old. I had no history of heart problems. I'm kind of a health nut. And I had this little talk with God. And what I told him was, hey, this is really pissing me off. I can't die at this point. You cannot do this to me. I can't leave my wife in this financial condition. I simply can't leave yet. I was not in a position financially to leave her to fend for herself for probably many years. So we talked all the way to the hospital. When I get to the hospital, they take me into emergency. And that day, there had been such an influx of people with heart attacks that they had to call the head of cardiology in. Well, guess what? I got the head of cardiology, which turned out to be a real blessing. So they proceeded to have me do a treadmill with an EKG. Now, my symptoms had subsided some by the time I got there, and initially they couldn't find anything wrong with me. So they did the treadmill, which raises your heart rate. And when they got done with it, they said, we can't find anything wrong with you. And the doctor, the head of cardiology, decided that there was a tiny little blip in the EKG that didn't seem quite right. And he decided to go in and look with the electrocardiogram. When he went in, they prepped me, put me in the room, and went inside. And when they got in and the camera was turned on, he said, oh my God, I could have killed you. And he said, you have a 100% blockage in one of your arteries. And I said, well, how come I'm still alive? He said, because you have developed collaterals around the blockage, which has kept you alive. This is an old blockage. He said, I'm going to try and go through it. Hopefully I can put the stent through it. So he proceeded to do that. He had some difficulty, but he did get the stent in there and got the blood flowing, and I almost instantly started feeling better. I was then taken back to the room, and I spent a couple of days in the hospital. I was discharged. My wife came to get me, and it was a beautiful sunny day. And I'll tell you, after that experience, the flowers smelled a little sweeter, the sun shined a little brighter, and it was great to be alive. I then went back to work in a couple of days and had an appointment to see the doctor in his office. I went to his office and I told him that I was feeling much better and that I was going to go cruising on my sailboat. I'd bought a 37-foot O'Day sailboat, and actually I had been preparing it for cruising when I could go. And he said, "Are you crazy? You can't go cruising. You just had a heart attack." I said, "Well, I don't care. I'm going anyway." And he said, "I recommend that you not do that." I said, "Well, I'm sorry, but I'm going to go anyway." So then he looked at me and he stared at me for probably, I don't know, a minute or two, didn't say anything. And finally he said, "You know what? I think you're going to be okay." "And you know why I think you're going to be okay?" I said, "Why?" He said, "Because you think you're going to be okay." And I left the office and proceeded to make final arrangements to head out. And the next segment, we'll talk about where we go from there. Thank you very much for joining me.